Hello there, I'm Cafe Khan and welcome back to my Android tutorials. In the previous video, we saw how to list available devices. In today's video, we'll see how to connect to a device. So let's get started. So moving on to our device list activity. So what we want is when user clicks on one item, so we want to send some data from our device list activity to main activity. So let's start that. So we need to change this start activity to start activity for result. Let's add a request code here. So private final int, say select device. Let's call it 102. So coming down and let's use it here. So select device. Similarly for this, so select device. So moving on to our device list activity, let's add on item click listeners for our list views. So list available devices dot set on item click listener new on item click listener. So what we want is we want the info from the list items. So view, let's typecast it to a text view. So get text to string. So this will give the entire detail from the item, so including the name and the address. So what we want is just the address. So let's get that. So string address is equal to, so info dot substring and info dot length minus 17. So this will give us our address. So now we need to pass it back to our main activity. So let's create an instance. So intent dot put extra, let's call it device address, and let's pass our address here. And so set result, so let's say result okay, and let's pass our intent here and let's finish the activity. So this will take our data back here and we need to handle the activity result. So let's do that. So on activity result, so if request code is equal to select device and result code is equal to result okay. So if that's the case, let's generate a toast. Let's first get our address. So string address is equal to data dot get string extra. Let's pass our key here and make text. So this requires context. Let's call it address plus address. Let's pass the duration and let's call the show function. Okay, so let's run our application and see what we've built so far. Okay, let's click here. Okay, we need to switch on the Bluetooth first. Allow. So coming here, so it shows me all my paired devices. Let's click on this one. So it shows F4, F5, and let's click on this one. It shows A8, 0C, etc, etc. Okay, so it's working so far. So now let's create a class which will act as a service to handle all our Bluetooth connectivity related functionalities. We'll call it ChatUtils. But before we move on to that, let's create a handler for our main activity, which will handle all the messages coming from our service to the main activity. So private handler, let's call it handler, new handler, and new handler callback. Okay, let's put a semicolon here. And our handler will handle certain sorts of messages. So let's define those. So public static final int. So let's say message state changed. Let's call it 0. Let's just copy paste these. Okay, so coming here. So message. So for reading a message, write to write a message. So device name. And toast message. So message toast. Okay, it looks good so far. So let's handle it here. So switch. So message dot what. So this tells the type of message. So we'll check that later when we work on ChatUtils. So let's define a case. So message state changed. Let's put a break here. Case message read. Again, let's put a break here. Case message write. Let's put a break here. Okay, so it says duplicate label, so we forgot to do this. Okay, so now it's good. So case, then message, device name. So here, so let's generate a toast. So toast.makeText, context, and we need our device name. So let's define a variable here. So private string connected device. So coming back here, so message dot get data and get string. So we need a key, so let's define a key here. So public static final string, so this would be device name, so let's call it device name. Let's use it here. So device name, this would be get string. Let's pass this connected devices here, and let's pass the length, and let's call the show function. Let's put break. Similarly for message toast, we'll create another toast here. So toast.makeText context and message dot get data and get string. Again, we'll need a key, so let's define a key. So public static final and string, so this would be toast, so is equal to toast. So coming back here, so toast, let's pass the duration, so length short, let's call the show function. Okay, so our handler is ready. Let's create our chat utility. So project, our directory, new and Java class, let's call it ChatUtils. So the OK button. Let's create a constructor. So public ChatUtils. So we'll be needing a context, so let's pass that. We'll be needing the handler, so let's pass that. Let's create some member variables. So private context. Similarly private handler and handler. Let's set these values here. So this dot context is equal to context, and this dot handler is equal to handler. So our chat utility will also have some states, so let's define that. So coming here, so public static final and int, let's call it state none, let's call it 0, and even this needs to be final. Okay, so let's add more. So public static final int and state listen, let's say 1, public static final int and state connecting, let's call it 2, and again public static final int and let's say state connected, let's call it 3. Let's create a member variable to handle the current state of our chat utility. So private int state, let's initialize it here. So state is equal to state none. Let's create a getter and setter for this state. So get state, let's call a setter, so set state. So this should be public synchronous. Why? Because a Bluetooth is synchronous device. Okay, so and we need to send the state back to the handler so that we can reflect the changes, reflect the state on the main activity. So handler dot, okay, so it's probably yes, let's add the right dependency. So android.os, so obtain message, so message is main activity dot state message state changed, and let's pass the current state -1 and send to target. Okay, so coming back to our main activity, so coming to this state changed, so switch message dot argument 1, which we've passed as the state, so let's handle those. So case ChatUtils dot state none, break case dot ChatUtils dot state listening, break, and case ChatUtils dot connecting, break, and case ChatUtils.state connected and break. And to reflect these states, we need to create a function. So let's do that. So private void set state. This would require a character sequence. So let's call it subtitle. So what we're doing here is, so whatever is our state, according to that, we are showing a subtitle in our action bar. So get support action bar and set subtitle. Let's pass this here. So coming back to our switch case. So if state is none, so set state not connected. If state is listening, so set state again not connected. If state is connecting, then set state connecting. And if state is connected, then set state connected and the device name, which we can get from our connected device. Okay, so we're good to go. So let's create an instance of our chat utility here. So private chat utility, let's call it ChatUtils. So coming down to on create. So let's initialize this. Chat utility is equal to new chat utility. Let's pass our context and handler. Okay, so coming back to the chat utility. So let's create a start and stop function. So private synchronize void start, private synchronize void stop. We'll define these shortly. So now let's create a thread which will handle all our connectivity. So let's create one. So private class, let's call it connect thread, and this will be a subclass of a thread. Okay, let's add some member variables. So private final and our Bluetooth socket, let's call it socket. Similarly, private final or Bluetooth device, let's call it device. So let's create the constructor. So connect thread, and this will take the Bluetooth device as a parameter. Let's set the value. So this dot device is equal to device. So let's set up our socket. So let's create a temporary socket. So Bluetooth socket, let's call it TMP is equal to null. Let's try. So TMP is equal to device dot create RFCOM socket to service record, and this requires a UID. So let's create one. So coming here, so private final UUID, let's call it app UUID, and UUID from string. So I have a string, so let's use that. Okay, so coming down, let's use this. So app UUID. Let's catch the exception. So IO exception, let's call it E. And let's create a log. So log.e connect constructor. Let's pass the exception here. Okay, so let's set the socket now. So socket is equal to TMP. Okay, so far so good. So let's create the run function. So public void run. So let's try to connect our socket. So try and socket dot connect. Let's catch the exceptions. So IO exception, let's call it E. So if there is an exception, so again let's try to close our socket. So socket dot close and catch that exception as well. So IO exception, let's call it E. Again, let's use the logs. So instead of constructor, this would be run, and instead of constructor, close socket. Okay, and this cannot be E because we've already got one E. Okay, so if the socket gets connected, then we need to handle a few things. Okay, so synchronized and ChatUtils.this, and we need to reset the instance of our connect thread. So let's create one. So private connect thread, let's call it connect thread. So coming down here, so connect thread dot cancel. Okay, we haven't defined cancel yet, so is equal to null. And then we need to call another function, say connect, which will handle all our connectivity. So this will require our socket, and so we'll call another function connect. This will require our device. So let's pass it. Okay, we haven't defined it yet, so we'll define it shortly. And similarly for this IO exception, let's call another function to handle it. So let's create that function first. So private synchronized void. So let's call it connection failed. Okay, so let's just call that function here. So connection failed, and let's return from this code block. So coming here, so let's create a message which we'll send to our handler to show the state in the main activity. So let's call it message and handler.obtain message. So main activity dot message toast. So we're going to generate a toast telling that the device couldn't be connected. So let's define a bundle instance to pass some data to our message. So bundle dot put string and main activity dot toast, and let's pass our message can't connect to the device. Okay, let's pass this bundle to our message. So message dot set data. Let's pass this bundle, and let's pass this message to our handler. So handler dot send message and message, and let's set the state. So set state, and let's restart our chat utility to start listening again. So start. Okay, so let's put this here and it's sorted. Okay, so we've handled connection fail. Let's create the connect function. So private synchronized and connect. Okay, so sorry, this would be void, the return type, and Bluetooth device, let's call it device. Okay, so now we need to close all the connected threads because we don't need it. We've already got a device and we've connected to that. So if connect thread is not equal to null, then connect thread dot cancel, which we haven't defined yet. So going back up, so public void cancel. So here we'll just try to close our socket. So socket dot close. Catch IO exception, let's call it E, and just copy paste this here. So this would be cancel. Okay, so coming down, so our cancel is working now. So let's make this instance as null, and let's generate a message which will be sent to our main activity. So message, let's call it message is equal to handler dot obtain message. So main activity dot message device name. So let's again create a bundle instance. So bundle instance is equal to new bundle and bundle dot put string. So main activity dot device name, and let's pass the device name here. So device dot get name. Let's pass this bundle to our message. So message dot set data message, and let's pass this message to the handler. Sorry, this would be bundle, and let's pass this message to our handler. So handler dot send message, and let's pass our message. Okay, and let's change the state of our ChatUtils to connected. State connected. So let's create another function connect, so which will be called from our main activity and which will start all this connection process. So going up, so let's define it here. So public void and connect. So this will require our Bluetooth device. Let's call it device, and we'll check the current state. So if state is equal to state connecting, then we'll stop the connection and we'll restart things. So connect thread dot cancel and connect thread dot is equal to null, and we'll restart it. So connect thread is equal to new connect thread, which will require our device, and connect thread dot start, and let's set the state of our chat utility to connecting. So state connecting. Okay, so moving on to our main activity. So let's define an instance for our chat utility. So private ChatUtils, let's call it ChatUtils. So coming down to our onCreate. So let's initialize it here. So ChatUtils is equal to new ChatUtils, and let's pass our context and the handler. Okay, so coming down now to this onActivity result, we don't need to show toast now. We can just call the connect function and pass the device. So Bluetooth adapter.get remote device, and we can pass the address, which will give us the Bluetooth device. So coming back to the utility. So now that all this connection part is done, so we need to add a thread which will accept these connections. Okay, so let's start that. So private, let's call it accept thread. So this will be a class. So this will be a subclass of thread. Let's add some member variables. So private Bluetooth server socket, let's call it server socket. Let's add the constructor. So public and accept thread. Let's try to initialize this server socket. So let's create a temporary server socket. So Bluetooth server socket, let's call it TMP. So null. So let's put it in our try catch block. TMP is equal to, and we'll be needing a Bluetooth adapter here. So let's create an instance for one. So private Bluetooth adapter, let's call it Bluetooth adapter. Let's initialize it here. So Bluetooth adapter is equal to get default adapter. So coming down and here, so Bluetooth adapter dot listen using RFCOM with service recording. So this requires our application name. So let's create one. So coming here, so private final string, let's call it app name, and let that be Bluetooth chat app. Okay, so coming down, let's pass this here. So app name, and let's pass the app UID. Okay, let's catch the exception. So IO exception, let's call it E. Let's just copy this here. Let's change this to accept constructor. Okay, so if this gets accepted, so if this is done, then we just set our server socket to temp. Okay, let's define the run function. So public void run. Here we'll try to connect this server socket. So try and server socket dot accept, and this will return a Bluetooth socket. So let's create an instance for that one. So Bluetooth socket, let's call it socket. Let's initialize it to null, and let's use it here. Let's catch the exception. So IO exception, let's call it E. And again, let's just paste that here. So this would be run. So if there's an exception, we will try to close our Bluetooth server socket. So let's try that. So Bluetooth server socket. So server socket dot close, and let's handle the exception. So IO exception, let's call it E1. Again, let's handle it here. So accept and close. Okay. So if this is successful, that means if socket is not equal to null, then we check the state and handle things accordingly. So if our state, so instead of if, let's use a switch case. So switch state, so case, so our state can be if it's listening or if it's connecting, then we call the connect function and we pass our device, which can be get from socket.getRemoteDevice. Let's call the break here. Similarly, if the case is none or connected, then we just close the socket. So socket.close, and we need to put this in a try catch block. So IO exception E, let's place it here. So except close socket. Let's put a break here. Okay, so let's define our cancel here as well. So public void cancel. So here we'll just try to close our server socket. So try and server socket.close. So let's handle the exception catch and IO exception. Let's call it E. Let's place this here. So this would be close server socket. Okay, this cannot be so long, so let's just reduce it. Close server. Okay, so let's add this as a member variable here. So private accept thread, and let's call it accept thread. So now moving on to our start function. So here, so before starting, we'll check if there is any instance of our connecting thread. If yes, then we'll cancel that and we'll set it to null. So just to make sure that we're starting fresh. Similarly, so if our accept thread is null, then we'll start a new instance of the accept thread. Okay, so accept thread dot start, and we'll set the state to listening. So set state listen. Okay, so far so good. Let's work on the stop also. So here we'll just close all the threads. So if connect thread is not equal to null, so connect thread dot cancel and connect thread null. Similarly for our accept thread, so if accept thread is not equal to null, then accept thread dot cancel and accept thread is equal to null, and we'll set the state to none. Okay, so where will we use this stop? So before we destroy our main activity, we need to call this stop. So coming to our main activity, so coming at the bottom, so on destroy, we just need to check if our chat utility is not equal to null, then chat utility dot stop. Okay, so probably it's private. Yes. So let's make this public. Okay, so let's run our application and have a look. Okay, our application's running, so let's have a look. Let's switch on the Bluetooth. Let's allow it. Okay, so let's try to connect to a device. So let's search for devices. So let's click on this K4 Vibe. Okay, it's asking me to pair, so I'm allowing pair and pair. Now, as you can see, it shows me a toast with the name of the Bluetooth device, and it says connected Vibe K5 Note. So that's all we wanted to do. So we've connected a device. So in the next video, we'll see how to share messages. Till then, if you have any doubts, any queries, feel free to drop a comment and we'll go through it. Bye-bye.